In this video, I'm going to show you guys what I thought were the best parts of Tesla's Battery Day. The much anticipated Battery Day for Tesla was apparently a big disappointment for a lot of shareholders, as Tesla shares tanked over 10% today. And I think people were expecting something that Tesla can show on stage, or at least an announcement on the delivery dates of the much anticipated Cybertruck and the Tesla Semi. But I still think there are some exciting things that were discussed, and if their plans go right, there is much potential to be had. But without further ado, let's check out the highlights.
So first, before we get too far into it, let's talk about what is in a battery cell. We've got the cap and the can, negative and positive terminals of the cell. When you open that cell, you've got a tab connected to those terminals, what we call the jelly roll, which is the wound electrodes on the inside. You can actually see what this looks like as you unwind it. This is over a meter long in a typical 2170 cell. So it's quite a long winding process. And you can see the tab still there. And then to explain what's actually going on here, we've identified we've got anode, cathode, separator, positive and negative terminal. Watch what happens as we, there we go, discharge the cell. Got lithium moving from anode to cathode, and then the reverse. When we charge the cell, anode moving from lithium moving from cathode to anode across the separator. This is the basic of what makes all lithium-ion batteries, whether they're no matter what the form factor is. And when we look at what's happened to date, at least in our products, we've moved from the 18650 form factor to the 2170 form factor through great collaboration with our partners, Panasonic, new partners like LG and CATL, and probably others in the future.
Yeah. Actually, so a slight note on why is the one called the 18650, although not on the slide, versus the 2170, is that the first two digits refer to the diameter, and the second two digits refer to the length. So that helps explain why are these weird. What's up with these weird numbers? But like nobody could explain to me why there was an extra zero. So I said, like, okay, well, we're deleting the zero that nobody can explain in future form factors. So that's why it's technically it's like the 18650 bizarrely, but going forward it's the 2170 because we just got rid of the extra zero because it's pointless.
And this was a evolutionary step, going from 1865 to 2170, bringing 50% more energy into the cell. But when we look to the ideal cell design, if we were to do it ourselves, we need to go beyond just what we're looking at us in front of us, and study the full spectrum of options. So as you can see, we kind of swept the key figures of merit, how much we can reduce the cost, and how much vehicle range increases as we change the outer diameter of the cell. We found a sweet spot somewhere around 46 millimeters. But it's not just about a bigger form factor. Like anybody could make a bigger form factor.
Any fool could make a bigger form factor. We not any fool.
Yeah, exactly. There are problems as you make cells larger. In fact, supercharging and thermals in general become really challenging as you make bigger cells. And this was the challenge that our team set our sights on to overcome. And we did. We came up with this tabless architecture that maybe you've heard about, that basically removes the thermal problem from the equation and allows us to go to the absolute lowest cost form factor and the simplest manufacturing process. And this is what we mean when we talk about tabless. It's kind of a beautiful thing.
That's what these T-shirts mean, but it's very esoteric. It's like nobody could figure it out. But
yeah, we basically took the existing foils, laser patterned them, and enabled dozens of connections into the active material through this shingled spiral you can see, with simpler manufacturing, fewer parts, 50 millimeter versus 250 millimeter electrical path length, which is how we get all the thermal benefits.
Yeah, this is important to appreciate. Like basically the distance that electron has to travel, is just much less. So you actually have a shorter path length in a large tabless cell than you have in the smaller cell with tabs. This is a big deal. So even though the cell is bigger, it actually has more power. The power to weight ratio is actually better than the smaller cell with tabs. This is, again, like this is quite hard to do. So it's nobody's done it before. And it really took a tremendous amount of effort within Tesla engineering to figure out how do we make a friggin' tabless cell and have it actually work and then connect that to the top cap. And it's there's a whole bunch of things that we're keeping a little secret sauce here that we're not telling everything. But
sometimes what's elegant and simple is still hard, and it took us a lot of trials, but we're happy where we ended up.
Yeah, I mean everything's simple in recollection. After you simple, everything it's hard until it's discovered, and then it's simple. So anyway, but there's a lot of really cool things going on that enable tablets, and it's really due to a really great engineering team. Drew and the rest of the team have done amazing work in achieving this tablets construction. And it sounds, I think it may sort of sound a bit silly to some people, but this is like, for people that really know cells, this is a massive breakthrough.
For cylindricals to be able to get rid of the tabs dramatically simplifies winding and coating.
Yeah.
And has an awesome thermal and performance benefit.
Yeah, that's just to elaborate on that a bit. It's like when the cell is going through the system, it has to keep stopping where all the tabs are.
Yes.
So you can't do continuous motion production if you have tabs. You have to keep stopping, and then there's a rate at which you can start and stop and accelerate again, and it really slows down the rate of production. And then sometimes you get the tabs wrong, and you also lose a little bit of active area. It's really a huge pain in the ass to have tabs from a production standpoint.
Yes. And so when we put it all together and go to our new 80 millimeter length, 4680, we call this new cell design, we get 5 times the energy with 6 times the power and enable 16% range increase just form factor alone.
Yeah, so when these, yeah, it's pretty great. And just to clarify, when we see these plus the 16% or whatever the percentage range increases, these are the amounts due just to that particular innovation.
Yes.
So we'll list a whole bunch of innovations, and then when you add them up, you get a total improvement in energy density and cost. But these numbers are what refer to just this thing.
We are starting to ramp up manufacturing of these cells at our pilot 10 gigawatt hour production facility just around the corner.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's a video of some of what's going on in the plant. Now, I mean, to be clear, it will take about a year to reach the 10 gigawatt hour capacity. So this is important to appreciate. Like when you build a factory, there's a certain capacity that you design to, and then it takes some period of time to actually achieve that capacity. So I would say it's probably about a year before we get to the 10 gigawatt hour annualized rate with the pilot plant. And this is just a pilot plant. The actual production plants will be more on the order of maybe 200 gigawatt hours, maybe more over time.
Let's talk about silicon. Why is silicon awesome? It's awesome because it's the most abundant element in the Earth's crust after oxygen, which means it's everywhere. It's sand.
Yeah. Sand is silicon dioxide.
Yeah. And it happens to store 9 times more lithium than graphite, which is the typical anode material in lithium-ion batteries today. So why isn't everybody using it? The main reason is because the challenge with silicon is that it expands 4x when fully charged with lithium. And basically, all of that expansion stress on the particles start cracking, they start electrically isolating, you lose capacity, the energy retention of the battery starts to fade, and it also gums up with a passivation layer that has to keep reforming as the particles expand.
Yeah, basically, with silicon, the cookie crumbles and gets gooey. That's basically what happens.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
And current approaches to solve this, which exist, I mean, we have silicon in the cars that you're all in right now, are involved highly engineered, expensive materials in the scheme of things. Now, they're still great, and they enable some of the benefits of silicon. They just don't enable all of it, and they're not scalable enough. And you can see some of the things that maybe you've heard of, SIO, silicon with carbon or silicon nanowires. That's kind of the space right now. What we're proposing is a step change in capability and a step change in cost. And what that really is to just go to the raw metallurgical silicon itself. Don't engineer the base metal. Just start with that and design for it to expand in how you think of the particle in the electrode design and how you code it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you saw this. Basically, a dollar per kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
Basically, if you use simple silicon, it's dramatically less than even the silicon that is currently used in the batteries that are made today, and you can use a lot more of it.
The anode would cost, with this silicon, and the anode costs $1.20 a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And how does it work? Start with raw metallurgical silicon, stabilize the surface with an elastic ion conducting polymer coating that is applied through a very scalable approach. No like chemical vapor deposition, no highly engineered high capex solutions, and then integrated into the electrode through a robust network formed out of a highly elastic binder. And in the end, by leveraging this silicon to its potential, we can increase the range of our vehicles by an additional 20%, just this improvement.
Yeah, it gets cheaper and longer range.
Yeah, and when we take that anode cost reduction, we're looking at another 5% dollar per kilowatt hour reduction at the battery pack level. Let's talk about cathodes. What is a battery cathode? Cathodes are like bookshelves where the metal, the nickel, the cobalt, the manganese, or aluminum is like the shelf, and the lithium is the book. And really, what sets apart these different metals is how many books of lithium they can fit on the shelves and how sturdy the shelves are. Cobalt is a...
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, like, it's tough to exactly figure out what the right analogy is to explain cathode and anode, but a bookshelf is probably a pretty good one, in the sense that you need a stable structure to contain the ions. So you want a structure that does not crumble or get gooey, or basically that holds its shape in both the cathode and the anode. As you're moving these ions back and forth, it needs to retain its structure. So if it doesn't retain its structure, then you lose cycle life and your battery capacity drops very quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think people are always talking about, like, oh, what's the cathode going to be? Is it NCA or whatever? The thing to consider is just fundamentally what the nickel, the metals are capable of, and that's what we have on the chart here. Dollar per kilowatt hour cathode of just the metal, using just LME, London Metal Exchange prices, versus the energy density of just the cathode. And you can see nickel is the cheapest and the highest energy density, and that's why increasing nickel is a goal of ours and really everybody's in the battery industry. But one of the reasons why cobalt is even used at all is because it is a very stable bookshelf. And the challenge with going to pure nickel is stabilizing that bookshelf with only nickel. And that's what we've been working on with our high nickel cathode development, which has zero cobalt in it. Leveraging novel coatings and dopants, we can get a 15% reduction in cathode dollar per kilowatt hour. But it's not just about nickel. You want to?
Yeah, sure. So in order to scale, we really need to make sure that we're not constrained by total nickel availability. I actually spoke with the CEOs of the biggest mining companies in the world and said, please make more nickel. It's very important. And so I think they are going to make more nickel. But there's also, I think we need to have a kind of a three-tiered approach to batteries. So starting with iron, that's kind of like a medium range, and then nickel manganese as sort of a medium plus, intermediate, and then high nickel for long-range applications like Cybertruck and the semi. Something like a semi-truck, it's extremely important to have high energy density in order to get long range. So, and just to give sort of iron a bit more time, like although if you look at the watt-hours per kilogram at the cathode level of iron, it looks like nickel's twice as good. But when you've fully considered at the pack level, everything else taken into account, nickel is about maybe 50 or 60% better than iron. So iron is little better than it would seem when you look at it at the pack level fully considered. It's not as good as nickel. Nickel is like 50 to 60% better, but it's actually pretty good. And so, good for stationary storage and for medium range applications where energy density is not paramount. And then, like I said, for intermediate, it's kind of a nickel manganese, and it's relatively straightforward to do a cathode that's 2/3 nickel, 1/3 manganese, which would then allow us to make 50% more cell volume with the same amount of nickel.
And with very little energy trade-off. I mean,
Yeah.
just enough to have you still want to use 100% nickel for something like a semi-truck, but really not much of a sacrifice at all.
Yeah.
The way the lithium ends up in the cell is through the cathode, so then we should obviously on-site lithium conversion as well, which is what we will do using a new process that we're going to pioneer. That's a sulfate-free process again, skip the intermediate. 33% reduction in lithium cost, 100% electric facility co-located with the cathode plant.
Yeah. So it's important to note that there is a massive amount of lithium on Earth.
Yeah.
So lithium is not like oil. There's a massive amount of it pretty much everywhere. In fact, there's enough lithium in the United States to convert the entire United States fleet to electric. Like all the cars in the United States, there's like 300 million or something like that. Every vehicle in the United States can be converted to electric using only lithium that is available in the United States.
Discovered today.
What we already know exists.
People really haven't even been looking.
Yeah, people haven't been trying because it's just like widely available. So, but it is important to say, like, okay, what is the smartest way to take the ore and extract the lithium and do so in an environmentally friendly way? And we actually discovered again, looking at a sort of first principles physics standpoint, instead of just the way it's always been done, is we found that we can actually use table salt, sodium chloride, to basically extract the lithium from the ore. Nobody's done this before, to the best of my knowledge. Nobody's done this, and it's a sort of, all the elements are reusable. It's a very sustainable way of obtaining lithium, and we actually we actually got rights to a lithium clay deposit in Nevada.
Over 10,000 acres.
Over 10,000 acres. And then the nature of the mining is actually, I think, also very environmentally sensitive in that we sort of take a chunk of dirt out of the ground, or remove the lithium, and then put the chunk of dirt back where it was. So it will look pretty much the same as before, and it will not look like terrible, and yeah, it'll be nice. What does this mean for our future products? We're confident that long term we can design and manufacture a compelling $25,000 electric vehicle. This has always been our dream from the beginning of the company. I even wrote a blog piece about it because our first car was an expensive sports car, and then it was like slightly less expensive sedan, and then finally sort of a, I don't know, mass market premium, but like the Model 3 and Model Y. But it was always our goal to try to make an affordable electric car, and I think probably, like I said, about 3 years from now, we're confident we can make a very compelling $25,000 electric vehicle that's also fully autonomous.